So 8. What's particularly difficult about 8? Anything that a lot of people said it. I was just curious if there's anything that stands out that's different from the others. Ooh. So first step is always GCF. Do we know the GCF of this? Yeah. 2V. Good. And then what's left over? 2V plus 1. Okay. And then here? 2V as well. Oh, just V. Yeah. And just V. Okay. And this is 2V plus 1. Okay. So what do we got to do to make these the same? This needs a 2, right?
Right.
So 2 on top, 2 on the bottom. This needs a 2. 2 times 1 is just 2. Also needs the 2V plus 1. So yeah, we got to do a lot to that middle one. Good. And that whole thing, we can now, since all these are identical, 2V, 2V plus 1, 2V, 2V plus 1, 2V, 2V. If we multiply that everywhere, distribute it across the board, cancels all of those out. 1 equals, let's see here, 4V plus 2 plus 4. There we go. So quickly it turns into just a pre-algebra equation, right? Nothing we can't handle. So your answer is -5 is 4V, and so 5 both sides by 4. There you go. -5/4. Not quite as easy to check when we get an answer like that, so we have to be extra careful. Right. Good start. We can look at both. Requires us to be able to factor. That's really the most difficult part about this, right? So factor the easier ones first. That will help us out later. So GCF here. Now, this can help us. The fact that we have an n plus 1 here, that can probably help us factor this. Chances are it's going to factor to an n plus 1 times something else. Right? Well, in order to get 2n squared, I'd need this to be 2n. That'll give us n times 2n squared. And in order to get a -1 here, I'll need a -1 here. So the 1 times -1 is -1. And check the cross products. 2n and no, that's not it. 2n minus n does give us positive 1n. Okay, so without having to do all the other factoring work, okay, use the other factors as a clue, kind of like foreshadowing. Well, if it's an n plus 1 here, it's probably going to be an n plus 1 over here times something else. And otherwise, you can still go through and say what two numbers multiplied by, -2n, add to 1, and go through this whole step, but just realize that you may not have to do all this work if you catch the hint ahead of time. So So you get the same two factors either way, 2n minus 1 and n plus 1 that we got here. Okay. I just didn't have to write all that out. Okay. Alright, so let's... What do we got to do here? This needs an n. Let's do that. This needs an n. Top and bottom. So we got three factors, an n plus 1, and 2n minus 1. So here we have, we need the 2n minus 1. Top and bottom. 2n minus 1. Since there's just a 1 on top, I can just ignore the 1 and just put 2n minus 1 on top. 1 times 2n minus 1 is 2n minus 1. And over here I'm missing an awful lot. Right? I'm missing the n plus 1 and the 2n minus 1. Both of them. So recognizing that there's three factors here is crucial. Doing the factoring correctly will help you see that. And then we can go through and, alright, the whole GCF thing, the whole GCF thing, that's going to cancel with all these. So I'm left with just whatever's on top to solve. We have n, 2n minus 1 equals that whole thing. And I think we did the same thing before yesterday. No, it wasn't quite as difficult yesterday on that one. We've done problems like this before, where since we need to get this thing equal to 0, we actually have to multiply this out. 2n squared minus n plus 2n and minus 1. Notice how this is basically the same thing this was. That's what we factored it. We know that n plus 1, 2n minus 1 equals this. We just happen to have to go back the same direction, so it ends up being the same thing. So now let's get it equal to 0. Let's see here. Let me first combine these together. So it's what, plus n minus 1. And let's go ahead and, oh, we could have combined these two together as well. Huh? So that's going to actually be n plus 2n is (3n). So first things first, anything that's the same term on both sides, combine them. And then we can go through and get it equal to 0. Minus 3n plus 1 minus 3n plus 1. Let's see what I got. So now the whole left-hand side is 0, and we have this to solve. That's 0 here. So looks like more GCFs, right? They both have a 2. They both have an n. So 2n, n minus 1. So that means that 2n can be equal to 0 and n minus 1 equal to 0. So what times 2 times what is 0? 0. So n can equal 0. And then what minus 1 equals 0? 1. So 1 and 0 are our two answers. Let's check for extraneous real fast. If we plug in 0, does that cause a problem anywhere? If we plug in 0 here, does that cause a problem? 0 squared plus 0 is 0. And over here, 1 over 0, yeah, that's no good. So we actually have to throw out that answer of 0. That's extraneous. Okay, so we really only have one answer here, 1. Yeah, so there's a lot going on there. So remember, when you get, I don't really always remember to do that, but when I get an answer of 0, I realize that most of all these problems have a bunch of variables on the bottom. So there's a higher chance that you're going to end up dividing by 0. So especially when you get an answer of 0, make sure you check for that extraneous solution. Alright, yeah, a lot going on, right? Lastly, okay, again, it's all about starting off with factoring, right? So what's the GCF here? X. So that's x squared plus x minus 6. But can that be factored more? Yes, so you have to factor more. Chances are, one of the factors is x plus 3. Context clues. So in order to get x squared, I'd need an x here. In order to get a negative 6, negative 3 times what is negative 6? Negative 2. Check the inside outside. So negative 2 plus 3 does equal positive 1. So yeah, we do have the right one. Or you could go through and do the whole what two numbers multiply to negative 6, add to 1, and you get 3 and negative 2 as well. So again, knowing the how to factor. This one had the GCF of x and had to do trinomial. So we are missing what? This one's missing an x and an x minus 2. Missing both. This one is missing this whole thing, the x squared. It's missing both of these, which equals this, x squared plus x minus 6. So I'm going to put that on the top and bottom. I'm not going to be able to fit it in there. Okay. But yeah, this part right here. And I'm using this so I don't have to FOIL it back out again later. Okay. And all that will be canceled out. Okay, that whole yeah, GCF will cancel all this out, all that out. I'm just left with x minus 3 plus, remember this whole thing, x squared plus x minus 6 equals x squared minus 2x. Let's see here. Good news is that the x squareds will end up canceling out. So this isn't going to be a quadratic. It's going to be a little bit easier to solve. Let's see here. So we can, if we subtracted x squared on both sides, okay, those are 0, so there's no more x squareds. Now it's just about getting all the variables to the left, number to the right. So we have x plus x is 2x. So I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides. And then the negative 3, negative 6 will make negative 9. So we get a final answer of positive 9/4. Good problem. Now I won't give you one of these ones that's super long and difficult, but knowing how to do these, if you did do the work and you worked hard and you finally got those answers, that really tells yourself, that should tell yourself that you're ready to go, because that's a pretty drawn out problem. Both 14 and 16, those are pretty drawn out. Okay, so are we ready? Let's get it going. Alright.